What's going on, guys? Welcome back. In our last video, we did a quick draw up of the UI for our notifications feature. In this one, we're going to be getting started with our data modeling for our notifications. So let's just hop right into it and let's go to the model folder. And I want us to create two files here. One is going to be a Swift file, and we're going to call this notification. Guys, if you're building out like a production app that you're trying to release to the App Store, I would probably call it something different than notification. Typically with like naming convention, like for example, with Instagram, you would say like IG notification, or TikTok, you might say TT notification, stuff like that. Just because like notification is a pretty broad term, there's also a system notification type that Swift has. So just something to think about with your naming convention there. So anyway, I'm just going to call this notification, and then we're going to make one more file, and it's going to be called notification type. So our notification is just going to be a pretty simple struct, guys. Struct notification. It's going to be identifiable, and it's also going to be codable. And we're going to have an ID here, which is a string. We are going to have a post ID, which is also a string, but it's going to be optional. We'll talk about why in a second. Let's also go up to the top here, guys, and instead of foundation, we are going to import Firebase. And yeah. And then we are going to have a timestamp. And the timestamp obviously can't change. So, let's see, timestamp. Timestamp should be fine. Let's try to build this. I don't know why it's not showing up in autocomplete. I think Firebase code is just bad. But yeah, that looks fine. Okay, cool. And then guys, we are going to have a user ID. And then we are going to have two additional properties. We're going to have a post, which is optional, and a user, which is also optional. And next up, guys, let's go ahead and build out this notification type structure. And then I'm going to do a full breakdown of why this is the way we're modeling this data and explain it. So let's create a notification type. It's going to be an integer type enum, and it's going to conform to the codable protocol as well. We're going to say case, like, case, comment, case, follow. And then we are going to create a notification message here, which is a string. And we're going to say switch self. And we're going to say case.like. And this is where we get the notification message that corresponds to each type, guys. So obviously when it's a like, you want to say so-and-so liked one of your posts. When it's a comment, you want to say commented on one of your posts. And when it's a follow, you want to say started following you. So I'm just going to copy and paste this code in here. You guys can pause the video, go ahead and type this out. But that's the logic behind this, right? So obviously, this notification type structure is going to help us distinguish or differentiate between different notification types. And you guys can add notification types to the structure as you see fit, right? You might have a suggested follow. You might add reels to your app. You might have like any other number of notification types, right? And you guys can just add them to this data structure, add your notification message here. And this is a really nice way to model out your data. So a quick note on enums, guys. Whenever I have different types of things or like different options or statuses, I typically use enumerations for this. And that's because it's a really elegant and scalable solution to this type of problem, right? And the problem with this is that we have a single object, which is a notification that has different types associated with it. In this case, that's what this notification type structure represents. And I like to use enums, like I said, anytime I'm dealing with a custom type or custom status, right? In my head as a developer, anytime I see an object that has different types, I always create or almost always create an enum to deal with that. It's a much more scalable and elegant solution as opposed to using like maybe a bunch of different Boolean variables or creating a bunch of different classes and subclasses and stuff like that. I really like this format. So here's how we link the two things. We are going to go back to our notification object, and we're going to say let type, and this is going to be a notification type. So now every time we build out a notification, guys, this is what it's going to look like. Each one of them is going to have a unique identifier. Each one may or may not have a post ID associated with it, right? So that's the reason we make this post ID optional. It's because a notification doesn't have to be associated with a post. It could be a follow notification. So there's going to be a post ID sometimes, and sometimes there won't. And that's why we make that optional, because sometimes it will be there, sometimes it won't. Each notification will also have a timestamp. That's how we get this timestamp here to say when the notification was received. Each notification will have a user ID associated with it. Like, hey, this came from, let's make this a little bit more descriptive. We could say notification sender UID, right? So this is the user ID that represents the person that sent us this notification. So that's how I can ultimately fetch their user data, right? So this is Yuki that gave me this notification. And then I got some from Charles. I got some from Checo. I got some from Black Panther, right? So I need to know who sent me the notification so I can fetch the data about the user and display their username and their profile image there as well. So that brings me to these two objects here, right? So these are optional, guys, because these are like associated objects that we are going to fetch for this notification. There's always going to be a user associated with our notification, but won't always be a post. And, you know, I think we can understand why we make these optional. I could potentially model my data like this and say that in order to create a notification, I have to have a user associated with it. But when I make it optional, we'll see that it makes it so I can fetch all this notification data and then assign a user object to it later on, which allows me to load my data faster. And if you guys pay attention to your Instagram app, like go in a situation where you have really low service or really bad Wi-Fi, you'll notice that that's exactly how it functions. The notification data comes through first, and then user information and post information comes through a little bit later on. When you have a really good internet connection, all of that stuff comes through pretty instantaneously. But if you have a bad one or bad service, you'll notice that the data loads in like sort of separate processes or different tasks. One of them is fetching just the notification data that we see here. And then there are other tasks associated with fetching these objects. And if you make it so that you fetch all of this stuff all at once, it's just going to make it so that it takes a longer amount of time for all this information to show up on your screen. And we'll go into detail about that more later on. What I want us to do now is go ahead and create some mock notifications and then drop them into our UI or inject them into our UI. And then we are going to add some logic into our UI to display the correct types of things. So let's go to our developer preview, guys, and let's go ahead and create some notifications. We're going to say let notifications be an array of notification, and it's going to equal an array, and we can just go here and say .init. And let's see, we can say NSUUID .uuid string, timestamp, we could just say timestamp like that. Notification sender UID, like 123, notification type is like. And let's just go ahead and create a couple of these. So we can see here why like the enum is so useful here, right? We can just easily specify what type of notification we have. Like I can just go here and say .comment, here .follow, here like, that's fine. And let's go maybe say 456, 789, 1, 2, 4, blah, 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 right? Doesn't really matter. So these are just some mock notifications. And guys, we could add like user and post objects and stuff, you know, as part of our mock data, but I don't think that's really necessary. So what I want us to do next is go ahead and create like a view model for this. And then we're going to simulate fetching our data from a service, but use this mock data for now. And we're going to use that to inject all that stuff into our UI. So let's go ahead and create a view model for our notifications. We're going to call this notifications view model. This should all be pretty straightforward by now. We're going to create a class called notifications view model. It's going to conform to observable object. We're going to say at published var notifications equals an array of notifications. Notification, there we go. Let's go ahead and say init And we can say func fetch notifications. And we can just say self.notifications equals developer preview.shared.notifications. And then here we can just go ahead and say fetch notifications. And you guys obviously don't have to do this, but this is how we're going to set up our notification fetching later on. We're even going to implement a service and all of that stuff, but for now this is okay. And then let's go into our notifications view. We are going to create a state object var view model equals our notifications view model. In here, we're going to now say for each view model dot notifications, and we have notification in. And then, guys, I know I'm moving pretty quickly here, but like I said, this you guys should be pretty used to this type of stuff by now. Now we're going to go into our notification cell, and we are going to inject this with a notification, just like this. And that's going to cause an error in our preview. Let's fix that. We can just go here and say developer preview dot share dot notifications and just grab like the first one. And now what we're going to do is, since we don't have the user or anything like that yet, we're going to leave the circular profile image view for now, as well as the username, but we can go here and inject our notification message, right? So I can go here and say, do some string interpolation, notification, and this is how we get this, guys. We say dot type, and then if you guys remember, we have the notification message associated with that type from our enum, which is why I really like this implementation here. So let's go ahead and add some quotes around this, and don't forget your space. And let's go ahead and resume our preview, guys. And I think this is actually going to fail. So let's go back to our notifications view and take this notification that we get access to inside of our closure and go ahead and inject it into our notification cell. Right? Pretty straightforward implementation there with our MVVM architecture. And let's just go ahead and take a look at what this looks like. So we should get different notification messages back, right? And that's exactly what we get. Yuki liked one of your posts, commented on one of your posts, started following you, liked one of your posts, liked one of your posts. Okay, guys, I think we made a little boo-boo. So let's actually go back to our model. And I think I added a space here as well. Let's not do that. Let's leave that to the responsibility of the UI to implement that extra space. And then now if we go back to our notifications view and take a look at that, that should look pretty dope. Yes, so that looks perfect, right? So I'll just give you guys one more breakdown of our data modeling here. Actually, sorry guys, what we need to do is implement this follow button, right? So when we have this started following you, we need to have a follow button here. So let's actually do that before we end this video. So let's see. We need to add some logic here, right? So basically the logic behind this, and this is where this type property comes in handy even further, right? Like we don't just get this notification message from it in that really clean fashion. We can also use the type to help us figure out which view that we want to render here. So basically, guys, I'm going to say, let me go ahead and just cut this with Command X. I'm going to say if notification dot type is not equal to dot follow, and then else. So basically, the only time we want to show the follow button is if the notification type is equal to follow. So that'll fall into this else block. So basically, if the notification type is not a follow notification, we want to show the post image, right? And else, then we're going to have our follow button. So I'm going to just go ahead and create that really quickly, and then we'll do some testing. So we see that our post guy is still showing up, which is great. You guys could also change this to equals follow. So you could basically say, hey, if it equals follow, render the notification follow button, else do the post. And you guys could also do a switch through the notification type if you want, if you have more notification types. But this implementation is okay for now. So I'm going to change that back to not equals follow. And then let's go ahead and render our follow button, guys. So I'm going to create a button with an action and a label. We'll just say print debug handle follow here. And then our label, we're going to say text follow. We're going to say .font is .sub headline, .font weight is .semi bold, .foreground style is .white, background is .blue, clip shape, corner radius, or sorry, grounded rectangle, corner radius of 6, and that looks good for now. All right, so let's go ahead and see which one of our notifications is a follow type. Actually, no, we don't have to do that. We can just go back to our notifications view, and we should be able to see that showing up correctly. I just think we might need to adjust the frame of it a little bit. Okay, so it's not showing up. That's okay. Yeah, I think we just need to create a frame, guys. So let's go back to our notification cell, and let's say text is follow, and then what we want to do is go here and say .frame width and height is going to be 88 by 32. And let's go back to our notifications view. And let our preview render out. And that is still not showing up. That's very interesting. I wonder why. Okay, so let's try to figure it out. So it is good that we are not getting our post image there, right? And we get our notification message showing up. So that's good. So this should be a pretty simple explanation. So let's think. Foreground style. Oh, I said background style. That's why it needs to just be background, not background style. So that should solve the problem there, guys. And voila, that looks awesome, right? So now we have like our whole notification UI pretty much completely set up, right? The only thing we need to do is from here is go over our backend implementation of uploading and fetching notifications. And then we need to do a little bit more with how to fetch our user data and post data for the associated notification. And then we're also going to have some navigation associated with this as well, right? So for example, I can click on the post here and it will take me over to the post that the notification is associated with, or I could click on the user that sent me the notification and go over to their profile. So we're going to go over how to do that as well. But that's going to wrap it up for this video, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.